Would you dare board a train where danger waits along every meter of the journey? Some of these railways cross places where a single mistake can come at a devastating cost. Sometimes there is no second chance. Where the tracks stretch across towering steel bridges, above forests and deep valleys. Where powerful ocean waves crash over the railway, slamming directly into the side of the train. Or where trains must push through snowstorms capable of burying the entire line. Behind every journey is a constant battle against the terrain, the weather, and the forces of nature. It is a gamble with death itself. So how did people overcome challenges this extreme? The most breathtaking railway journey begins right now. High in Colorado's Rocky Mountains, the Georgetown Loop Railroad winds through cliffs, narrow canyons, and pine-covered slopes. The line is only about 7.2 kilometers long, yet within that short distance, the train climbs nearly 200 meters in elevation. The tracks cannot run straight. To allow the steam locomotive to make the climb, the railway curves into a series of horseshoe loops, constantly changing direction to reduce the gradient. The most dramatic section is Devil's Gate High Bridge. Nearly 30 meters above Clear Creek, the narrow-gauge train crosses a steel trestle suspended over open space. Directly below lies the very section of track it passed only moments earlier. The railway once carried silver ore between Georgetown and Silver Plume. Today, it carries visitors through the Rockies, but every curve, bridge, and steep grade still reveals how engineers had to reshape the entire route to conquer the rugged mountain terrain. Kuranda Scenic Railway has crossed Australia's Great Dividing Range since 1891. To reach the highlands, workers carved 15 tunnels entirely by hand and built 37 bridges through tropical rainforest. Every structure was designed to overcome a different obstacle. Some crossed steep mountainsides, others spanned deep ravines, others passed through solid rock. Every kilometer of track had to adapt to the terrain of the mountain range, but the landscape has never stopped changing. After heavy rain, landslides can still send rock and debris onto the railway. In 2010, a major landslide dumped tons of rock onto the tracks, causing a train to derail and seriously injuring 5 passengers. Today, the railway operates as a tourist attraction, but the route still reflects the constant challenge of keeping a railway open in one of Australia's most rugged mountain landscapes. Winter at Cumbres Pass can leave behind nearly 13 meters of accumulated snowfall. Entire sections of track disappear beneath the snow. Trains can return only after the line has been cleared. The Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad crosses the San Juan Mountains at an elevation of more than 3,000 meters. The narrow terrain and sharp curves forced engineers to use a narrow gauge of only about 91 centimeters, allowing the locomotives to continue climbing through the mountains. The line was completed in 1880 during the mining boom. Steam locomotives once hauled ore across the pass before descending toward the lowlands. Today, steam locomotives still run along this historic railway carrying tourists. But each operating season still depends on whether the snow has retreated from the pass and the tracks are safe enough for the trains to continue their journey. El Chepe Railway stretches for more than 650 kilometers through the Copper Canyon system of northern Mexico. It is one of the longest and most complex canyon railways in North America. To cross the Sierra Madre Occidental, the line passes through 86 tunnels and nearly 40 bridges. There is almost no long stretch of level track along the entire route. On many curves, the front of the train is already following the cliff ahead. The rear carriages are still hidden inside a tunnel. Just a few minutes later, the train emerges onto bridges spanning deep canyons, then disappears once again into the pine forests covering the mountainsides. Today, El Chepe remains the only passenger railway crossing Copper Canyon. For many communities scattered across this vast mountain region, it is still one of the few transportation links connecting them with towns and cities beyond the mountains. Every day, more than 7 million passenger journeys flow through Mumbai's Suburban railway network. When a train comes to a stop, hundreds of people immediately rush into the carriages. The entire process lasts only a few seconds. Along many sections, 3 trains can appear at the same time on parallel tracks. One has just left the station. Another is racing in from the opposite direction. A third is already following close behind. There is almost no gap between them. During rush hour, many carriages become completely packed. Passengers fill every doorway. Some even cling to the outside of the train as it continues through the city. Trains run one after another from early morning until late at night. On many lines, the interval between services is measured in just a few minutes. If one train is delayed, the entire schedule behind it can be affected. This is one of the busiest suburban railway networks in the world. Amid a flow of people that almost never stops moving, the entire system must maintain remarkable precision throughout the day. Bolan Pass offers very little flat ground. Most of the landscape is made up of rock, cliffs and narrow gorges stretching for dozens of kilometers. Right through this rugged terrain, a railway has operated for more than a century. The Bolan Pass Railway links together dozens of tunnels and steel bridges to cross the Toba Kakar Range. In some places, the gap between the cliffs is only wide enough for a single railway track. There is no room for another line beside it. As each train passes through, the sound of the locomotive echoes between the rock walls. A single sharp curve can hide the rest of the train from view. The terrain itself limits how far ahead you can see. For more than 100 years, the route has remained almost unchanged. Today, it is still one of Pakistan's most important mountain railways. Every journey shows how the line had to adapt to the dry, deeply fragmented landscape of Balochistan. The Kiruna-Narvik Iron Ore Railway carries iron ore from Kiruna in Sweden to the port of Narvik in Norway. Each train can be nearly 750 meters long. The total weight can reach about 8,500 tons. The railway runs deep within the subarctic region. Winter lasts for months. Snow blankets the landscape. Temperatures drop to extreme lows. Dozens of ore wagons cross the international border in a single journey. On the descent toward Narvik, the braking system must control the entire load over long downhill gradients. Even a small error can place enormous stress on both the locomotives and the track. Narvik plays a unique role because its port remains operational throughout the winter. Ore from Kiruna is shipped directly to the sea from here. That is why this railway continues operating through snow, ice, and some of the heaviest freight trains in Europe. Ferrocarril Central Andino begins near sea level in Lima. Just a few hours later, the train is already high in the Andes at an elevation of nearly 4,800 meters. It is one of the highest adhesion railways in the world. The elevation rises too quickly for the tracks to climb straight up the mountain. In some sections, the railway is supported only by steel bridges spanning deep mountain gorges. The air grows thinner. The locomotive, the braking system, and the people on board all have to operate in conditions where the oxygen level is only about half of what it is at sea level. More than a century has passed, yet Ferrocarril Central Andino remains one of the most challenging railways in South America. Not because of its length or speed, but because every kilometer takes the train closer to one of the most extreme elevations a conventional railway can reach. In Lebong Tandai, the railway is more than a means of transportation. It is almost the only route connecting a village deep in the forest with the outside world. The Lebong Tandai Railway was built during the Dutch colonial era to serve the gold mines. Today, small locomotives still pull carriages, carrying passengers and supplies. The journey passes through the tropical rainforest of Sumatra. The line crosses dozens of small bridges. Some rise only a few meters above the streams below. Many sections of track have remained in place since the railway was first built. In some places, trees grow right beside the rails. In others, the distance between the track and nearby houses is only a few meters. The trains always move slowly, but there is almost no alternative. The gold mining era has long since passed. Yet this railway has never lost its purpose. Every train continues to roll through the rainforest, just as it has for generations. Stoosbahn is only about 1.7 kilometers long, but over that short distance, it climbs nearly 750 meters to reach the mountain village of Stoos. Some sections have a gradient of up to 110%. It is the steepest funicular railway in the world. The train passes through a series of tunnels. Inside, the ride feels more like traveling in an inclined elevator built into the mountainside. To keep passengers from leaning with the slope, each cabin is equipped with a self-leveling system. Even as the train continues its climb, the floor remains almost perfectly level throughout the journey. Stoos is a car-free village. That makes this railway its most important connection to the outside world. Every trip has to conquer a gradient that very few railways anywhere in the world can operate on safely. Steam from the locomotive gradually drifts over the carriages behind it. Ahead, the tracks curve onto a steel bridge supported by stone piers above a forested valley in the Nilgiri hills. Nilgiri Mountain Railway is only about 46 kilometers long, but from the foot of the mountains, it climbs from an elevation of about 300 meters to more than 2,200 meters before reaching Ooty. The gradient is too steep for ordinary wheels to maintain enough grip. The train relies on a rack and pinion system installed between the rails. This allows it to maintain traction and stability on the steepest sections. Even today, it remains one of the very few railways in India that still uses this system. Throughout the journey, the train passes through more than 200 curves, numerous bridges, and 16 tunnels. Its speed is always kept low. That is how it steadily conquers the mountainsides of the Nilgiri hills. A steam train slowly rolls into a narrow street. Shops, vehicles, and pedestrians line both sides. This is not a tourist attraction. It is a railway that still operates every day. It is the Darjeeling Himalayan Railway. The line uses a narrow gauge of just 610 millimeters. In some sections, the tracks run directly in front of shop entrances. Shopkeepers continue serving customers. Pedestrians need only a few steps to cross in front of the locomotive. The whistle sounds constantly to warn that the train is approaching. The gradient steadily becomes steeper. The tracks cannot climb the mountainside in a straight line. Engineers created loops and reversing sections so the train could gradually gain elevation without using a rack railway system. Only after leaving the town does the train gradually enter the hillsides covered by Darjeeling's tea plantations. Running along the southern coast of England, the Dawlish Seawall Railway is one of the most exposed and storm-battered railway lines in Europe. Built directly beside the sea in the 1840s, the tracks lie only a few meters from crashing waves and powerful Atlantic storms. During severe weather, massive waves explode over the seawall. They crash directly into passing trains. At times, seawater completely engulfs the carriages. In 2014, a powerful storm destroyed part of the seawall. The railway foundation beneath it was washed away. The line had to close for several weeks while repairs were carried out. Even today, every train continues to run just meters from the sea, a place where nature is always close, and even the smallest change leaves very little room for error. Many visitors come to Hanoi Train Street for one reason: to wait for the moment the train appears in the middle of the street. The horn echoes from the far end of the tracks. Dozens of phones are raised at the same time. Every eye immediately turns toward the approaching locomotive. This is part of Vietnam's North-South Railway. The tracks run directly through a residential neighborhood in the heart of Hanoi. The locomotive slowly rolls past. Balconies, shops, and cafes line both sides of the railway. In some places, the gap between the train and the buildings is less than 1 meter. The entire experience lasts less than a minute. But in that brief moment, you can truly feel what it is like to watch an active railway pass through a space that was never designed for trains. Perhaps there are very few places in the world where an entire train can be lifted off the tracks by hand in just a few minutes. In the countryside around Battambang, Cambodia, wooden platforms are mounted on small steel wheels that run directly along an old railway line. The design is remarkably simple. Yet for many years, it served as a familiar form of transportation for local people. Each carriage is powered by a small engine mounted at the rear. They carry passengers across rice fields, brushland, and wide stretches of countryside. Because the railway consists of only a single track, two trains cannot pass each other. When they meet, the lighter carriage is lifted off the rails first. Once the other train has passed, it is placed back on the track and the journey continues. This flexible way of operating is what made the bamboo train so distinctive. There is no large locomotive, no modern railway system, just a vehicle created by local people from an old railway line to serve everyday life. The train crosses a canyon in the Aso region. It travels over a narrow bridge, carrying only a single track. Looking out the window, you can clearly see the valley far below. Volcanic slopes stretch across the distance. At times, the track ahead seems to shrink into a thin line, suspended between rocky mountainsides and the open space above the canyon. The Minami-Aso Railway runs along the southern edge of Mount Aso's volcanic caldera. It passes through one of the largest volcanic systems in Japan. Throughout the journey, the railway crosses a landscape shaped by geological activity. Its bridges and tracks were built in an environment far more unpredictable than that of most conventional railways. The 2016 Kumamoto earthquake caused severe damage to many bridges and sections of track along the line. It took years before the railway was fully restored. That alone shows how maintaining a railway through an active volcanic region like Aso requires constant monitoring and extensive engineering work. The air begins to change long before the train reaches its highest point. The higher it climbs into the Andes, the thinner the air becomes. At an elevation of more than 4,220 meters, simply breathing becomes part of the journey aboard Tren a las Nubes. Outside the window are deep canyons, barren rocky slopes, and vast plateaus with almost no trees or signs of human settlement. Because of the extreme altitude, the train carries oxygen tanks on board, and medical staff travel with every journey to assist passengers if needed. The route also crosses the La Polverilla Viaduct. The steel bridge stretches across a valley about 63 meters above the ground. From the window, the valley floor seems impossibly far below. The longer you look down, the more you realize you are traveling on one of the highest railways in the world. In Gisborne, there is a place where airplanes and trains share the same crossing. Just minutes earlier, a train passed through. Moments later, the runway is cleared again for an aircraft to take off or land. The Palmerston North Gisborne Railway crosses the main runway of Gisborne Airport at ground level. Every time a train approaches, air traffic operations must be coordinated to give priority to either the train or the aircraft. Speed is strictly controlled at the crossing. The railway signals must operate flawlessly, so must the warning lights. Air traffic controllers coordinate continuously to ensure that the two vehicles are never in the same place at the same time. The train runs only a few times each week, but every journey must be carefully synchronized with the airport's takeoff and landing schedule. The train continues north through the vast forests of Sweden, passing across landscapes where signs of human presence are almost nowhere to be seen. Inlandsbanan stretches for more than 1,200 kilometers through taiga forests, lakes, and wetlands. Some sections run for dozens of kilometers without passing a single town. Small stations appear and quickly disappear behind the trees. Mobile phone signals often fade away. Outside the window, there is little more than endless forest and water stretching into the distance. On this railway, the feeling of isolation does not come from altitude or towering cliffs. It comes from the immense distances across landscapes that still belong almost entirely to nature. The locomotive slowly pushes the entire train up the slopes of Mount Washington. As it climbs higher, the trees gradually disappear. All that remains are rock clouds and powerful winds sweeping across the mountainside. The Mount Washington Cog Railway began operating in 1869. It was the world's first cog railway. Its steepest gradient reaches about 37%. Ordinary wheels cannot provide enough traction. The locomotive must engage with a rack rail placed between the tracks to continue climbing toward the summit. Mount Washington rises to only 1,917 meters, yet it is famous for its extreme weather. Winds have been recorded at 372 kilometers per hour, a world record that stood for many decades. Fog, rain, and temperature can all change within a very short time. Every journey passes through several different climate zones before reaching the summit. When severe weather develops, trains may have to turn back before reaching the top. That decision depends on wind speed, visibility, and track conditions near the highest part of the mountain. Ribblehead Viaduct stretches for more than 400 meters across the Yorkshire Dales. "24 stone arches carry the Settle Carlisle Railway high above the Moss Valley. This is one of the most exposed sections of the entire route. There are no forests, no cliffs, and almost nothing to block the wind. During winter, strong winds, snow and fog often sweep directly across the viaduct. On some days, the arches ahead almost disappear into a curtain of white. These conditions can reduce visibility and affect railway operations. From the train window, it feels as though the entire journey is suspended above open space. Only when the wheels reach solid ground again does the vast landscape begin to close in. The Devil's Nose Railway passes through one of the steepest sections of the Andes in Ecuador. Over a distance of only about 12 kilometers, the line climbs nearly 500 meters in elevation. The gradient is so severe that the tracks cannot follow the mountainside in a straight line. Engineers designed a series of zigzag switchbacks. The train repeatedly moves forward and then reverses onto another section of track before continuing its journey. Each change of direction allows the train to gain or lose only part of the elevation. Beside the tracks are sheer cliffs and steep mountain slopes. Most of the journey is made at very low speed. The locomotive must maintain constant traction, while the braking system remains stable through every reversing section. The railway took 33 years to complete and was built by about 4,000 workers. Around 2,000 of them lost their lives to disease and landslides during its construction. For hundreds of kilometers ahead, there is almost nothing outside the window except sand. No towns, no forests, only endless dunes stretching to the horizon. The Hotan-Rokyang Railway extends for more than 820 kilometers. About half of the route crosses the Taklamakan Desert, one of the largest and harshest deserts in the world. The wind constantly blows sand toward the railway. After a sandstorm, the tracks can quickly become buried if they are left unprotected. That is why tens of millions of drought-resistant shrubs and trees have been planted along the line. They are reinforced by kilometers of sand barriers designed to keep the tracks from disappearing beneath the dunes. Even so, maintenance never stops, because in the Taklamakan Desert, the landscape never stands still. It changes with every wind. Landwasser Viaduct is one of the most beautiful and most dramatic railway bridges in the world, rising about 64 meters above the valley. The track curves across the bridge before leading the train directly into a tunnel carved through the mountainside. But do not let its beauty fool you. The train runs on towering stone piers in the heart of the Alps. Far below, lies a deep valley. Around it are freezing winds and heavy winter snow. Ice can form on the tracks. Safe operation always demands precise control. The Glacier Express stands out against the white snow and grey rock walls. As the train crosses the bridge, strong crosswinds can strike the side of the carriages. The vibration becomes especially noticeable when the train reaches the middle of the span. This is where human engineering meets the harsh reality of the high mountains. Every meter the train travels across this bridge feels as though it is suspended between the earth and the sky. It is a journey that is both breathtaking and unforgettable. The Trans-Iranian Railway stretches for 1,394 kilometers, but that number alone does not reveal how challenging the route truly is. Over the course of a single journey, the train passes through high mountains, deep canyons, arid plateaus, and regions with completely different climates. The terrain changes constantly. So does the weather. To keep the railway operating, engineers built 224 tunnels. Eleven of them are spiral tunnels. They also constructed 174 major bridges and 186 smaller ones. Every structure was built to overcome a different obstacle, from steep mountain slopes to deep valleys and major rivers. Rather than confronting a single difficult section, the railway must continuously adapt to nature throughout the entire journey. Even today, the line remains Iran's main north-south rail corridor. Every year, when Bishwa Ijtema takes place, millions of people travel to the outskirts of Dhaka. Within just a few days, trains become the primary means of transporting pilgrims to the gathering. The carriages quickly filled to capacity. Passengers crowd every doorway. Those arriving later continue forcing their way aboard. Some cling to the sides of the train. Others are pulled up onto the roof by people already sitting there. Within minutes, nearly the entire roof is packed with rows of passengers. From the passenger compartments and doorways to the rooftop, almost no space remains. Railway stations, platforms, and the rail network all operate at nearly full capacity. Each journey lasts only a few hours, but during that time, the number of passengers can far exceed the train's intended capacity. The same scene returns almost every year during Bishwa Ijtema, becoming one of the most striking images of railway overcrowding. After just one snowstorm, the entire railway can disappear beneath several meters of snow. The tracks, the signals, even trains standing still can be completely buried. Donna Pass is one of the most challenging railway sections in the Sierra Nevada. Winter often brings powerful storms, heavy snowfall, strong winds, and the constant risk of avalanches. To keep the line open, the railway passes through dozens of snow sheds and uses wooden avalanche galleries to protect the tracks from massive slides rushing down the mountainsides. When snowfall becomes too deep, rotary snowplow trains are brought in to clear the route. On some days, trains travel between walls of snow that rise higher than the locomotive itself. The landscape becomes completely different from summer. Yet this railway remains one of the most important transportation corridors across the Sierra Nevada. On the Argo Gedi Railway, there is one section that many passengers eagerly wait for. The train slowly rolls onto the Chikubang Bridge. The bridge rises nearly 60 meters above a broad valley below. The terrain is so steep that taking the railway down into the valley and climbing back up was almost impossible. Building an alternative route was also beyond the available budget at the time. Instead, engineers chose to construct a steel bridge spanning the valley, allowing the railway to continue straight across. The locomotive slows as it crosses each span. On both sides, there is almost nothing but open air. Looking out the window, the entire valley stretches directly beneath the train. The feeling of floating continues all the way across the bridge. Many passengers still find themselves holding their breath until the train reaches solid track on the other side. The Qinghai-Tibet Railway crosses the Qinghai-Tibet Plateau at elevations above 4,000 meters for most of its journey. Many sections are built on permafrost. As temperatures rise, the frozen ground beneath can thaw and become unstable. To prevent the tracks from sinking or warping, many sections are elevated on viaducts. Others use crushed rock foundations and cooling systems to keep the permafrost stable. Along the route, dedicated wildlife crossings allow Tibetan antelope and other animals to move safely across the railway. The thin air presents another challenge. On board, oxygen is supplied to the passenger cabins to reduce the effects of the high altitude. Outside the window, the train continues across a landscape with almost no trees, surrounded by the vast open plains of the Tibetan Plateau. Along the Mlimba to Makambako section, the railway rarely has a chance to continue in a straight line. It crosses a valley, then disappears into a mountain. It spans a river, then follows a steep mountainside. The terrain constantly forces the route to change direction. This is the most complex section of the Tazara Railway. Hundreds of bridges and tunnels are packed into this stretch to carry the line through the mountains of southern Tanzania. This section alone contains many of the railway's most important engineering structures. The train maintains a steady speed, but the landscape never does. One moment it is passing through dense forest. A few minutes later, it is crossing a deep valley or running beside towering cliffs. These railways do more than connect distant places. They show just how far people have gone to create routes that once seemed impossible to build. Every line stands as proof of what human determination can achieve against the forces of nature. Of all the railways you've seen today, which one impressed you the most? And if you could experience only one of them, which journey would you choose? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoy exploring remarkable journeys like these, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next adventure.